Have you ever seen one of those little black boxes with a single switch on the top where you flip the switch on and an arm comes out and shuts it off? Well, this is somewhat similar to our topic today on the county seat. Significant benefits of one federal program in which billions of dollars have been invested is zeroed out by another in which millions are being invested. The first program benefits several users, the second only one group. Now, many of you probably already have an idea of where I'm going with this. And sadly, there are dozens of correct answers. But today's has to do with water uses along the Colorado River system. Rhea starts our fishing expedition with the basics.
You probably think of them in terms of your favorite boating destination, like Lake Powell or Flaming Gorge. But for people who are concerned about the availability of water and its flow, they see components of the Colorado River Storage Projects Act of 1956, or CRSP Act, as it's commonly known. It was created to manage the water on the upper Colorado Basin rivers covering Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming. This act built a number of dams along the Colorado and its tributary rivers in the upper basin for agriculture and other beneficial uses like generating power, providing flood control, and regulating the flow of Colorado River so that the upper and the lower basin states can share the resources equitably. The Flaming Gorge Dam was built on the Green River in 1963 and is one of the major dams that controls the flow of the Green River through the state of Utah. The dam has done a lot for the area, creating hydroelectric power and the Flaming Gorge Reservoir for recreational use. But the dam has also come with its setbacks. Depending on how the dam decides to release the water from Flaming Gorge determines whether the river, the land, and the people who live downstream suffer. During the first 30 years of the operation, Flaming Gorge managed the flow of the water to the benefit of land, power users, and water interests downstream. However, in the 1990s, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service mandated that river runoff should take into account the endangered fish, and thus created the Upper Colorado Endangered Fish Recovery Program to manage the water flow from the dam to help save endangered fish on the river. Their thinking was to mimic the turbulent seasonal runoff that used to beset the river every spring. By 2007, the dam runoff simulated the post and peak seasons along the Yampa River. And in 2012, the river changed its flow, yet again, to accommodate the larva of the razorback suckerfish. This runoff scheme was called the Larval Trigger Study Plan. The idea was to open the floodgates on the dam, not only flushing the river's sandbars as in the past, but additionally by flooding parts of the wetlands so the fish can lay eggs and spawn. The goal was to increase the population of the fish, but it has come at the cost of landowners downstream. According to the LTSP studies, they have seen an increase in the razorback suckerfish. But the question is, at what cost? When water is released at high volume from the dam, the river below cannot handle it, and the river ends up eroding parts of the riverbanks. This in turn has eroded much of the farmland, creating a big loss for local farming and agriculture. Locals are hoping to find a better way to solve the problem, and that is the equation that Chad and his guests will tackle in just a minute. When they answer the question, who is more important here, the farmer or the fish? For the county seat, I'm Rhea Booth.
In a place that is beyond words, there is nothing to be said, except take your time in Bryce Canyon country.
all local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
Welcome back to the county seat. It's time for our discussion. We're bringing you that discussion today on the road. We are in Vernal, Utah at the Uintah County Courthouse for our discussion because we wanted to get a little bit closer to the situation. Joining us for the conversation are two landowners and people who've been very intimately involved in this entire process of trying to solve the river problems. We have Sean Massey, who's a landowner along the river and has some ideas on how to fix the problem. And we have Brent Sheffer, who's his neighbor, I suppose, just outside of Jensen, who's been 4 generations on the river. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I might add, Brent, you have actually worked for the Fish Recovery Program, so you have a little bit closer knowledge of how the fish behave on the river.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. I'm going to start the conversation by just throwing out the question. Is this working? Is what Fish and Wildlife and BOR doing every year working?
In my opinion, it's putting a strain on a lot of things like the fish and our soils and other things. I don't think personally it's really.
And from my end, I really can't answer that because I don't have the experience to know if their program is working.
They are talking about the success of the razorback suckerfish. They're talking about the pike. And the numbers that we can get from the federal government as far as the program goes and any kind of data they have, I was surprised at how few of the fish actually are in the numbers of the recovery for the millions of gallons of water they're dumping over the spillway and putting into the system. It's almost like it counts in hundreds. I saw one report where they said we had an increase of hundreds of fish, not thousands or tens of thousands or millions. So it seems like the recovery is happening at a huge cost.
I totally believe what you're saying is true. My wife and I went to a meeting and they gave these statistics, and based off of their results, we did not see where it was a success in their program and in the number of desired fish coming back.
If you're trying to bring back and have a native species population overtake a non-native in a natural way and make it sustainable in the river, and all you're doing is taking all the species and creating a larval pool for them to grow up in, and you have 10 times as many non-natives, aren't you creating 10 times as many non-natives as you're raising them? That seems to me that's what would be happening.
When they raise the river so high that the water comes over the banks and all of these fish come in, and then they have no way to get back to the river. So in a lot of these oxbows, which is a pool of water, a lot of these non-natives are, I think, and what I'm hearing, are taking over the natives in these programs that they're using.
Because they're more aggressive and
correct.
And they eat fish, and some of the natives don't eat fish.
Their numbers are exploding under the program that they're using, is what I'm hearing.
Well, what I'd like to see is some data on what kind of numbers of non-natives they are actually taking out.
What are the damages that are happening? That's what I want to know, is what's happening to your land?
So I'm having issues with the salts coming to the surface. I'm having issue with the invasion of non-native vegetation. My cottonwoods are basically just rotting from the inside out. I've got 300-year-old trees. I had 300-year-old trees that are just tipping over.
So I want to talk about the salt situation, because this is something a lot of people aren't thinking about. What do you do if you get, I mean, how do you fix salt coming up to the surface of your soil? I've seen it before, but I don't know how you treat it.
The only way you can treat it is to push it back down with water. So the water has pushed it to the surface, so you just have to drop that water level to where you can push it back down.
And how do you push it down? I mean, you don't go out with a shovel and go like this or anything.
No.
The NRCS has come up with a program with the sprinkling system.
Mm-hmm.
They have helped a lot of farmers out by getting sprinklers. And sprinklers basically are like rain, and they drop down in and it pushes it back into the ground.
So there would be critics of this saying we're trying to duplicate the natural flow, and all that they're doing by bringing that dam up to 6,000 feet, and on those couple of weeks just letting water flow like crazy, they say, well, that's just duplicating the natural course of the river, and you know, you'll have that every 100 years. How do you counter that?
You're right. Yeah, we could have it every 100 years, but not every year, because they can hold enough water in the Flaming Gorge Dam to where when the Yampa out of Colorado peaks on runoff in the springtime, they can release water out of the Flaming Gorge Dam to create these 100-year floods every year, is what we're up against.
So, and when I go back and I look at the old literature from the Bureau of Reclamation, and when they were putting these mega dams along the river, the idea, one of the 4 stated missions of the river was flood control. And so isn't this fish program going contrary to one of the purposes of putting the dams in the river in the first place? I don't know, neither one of you want to answer that. It's a politically charged question.
Yeah,
but
right.
it's a question that people at home are going, well, if that was the purpose, why are they doing this?
I can't answer that.
Well, you know, you need to ask them.
I think we've demonstrated the problem and the fact that there just doesn't seem to be a good solution. I do want to turn to solutions.
Okay, what I'm proposing is we have some canals down on our farm on the Green River below Jensen, and we have to get water from the Green River over to our pumps so we can pump the water into our pivots, into our irrigation systems for raising crops. So I'm proposing that we bring water into these canals and raise fish in these canals as we're using the water that we're pumping out onto the farm ground.
You don't have to bring the 100-year flood on to get that water into those canals.
Correct.
Is there enough capacity in your canals currently that you could make a significant impact, or would you have to increase the system?
I believe that we could make a huge difference the way we're just about set up right now.
What Sean is proposing here, it's something we could look at. Mm-hmm. It could work. Every situation upon the river is going to be a little different, mm-hmm. because of the lay of the land, the lay of the river, but I think that things like this could be looked at and could help out, really. Could
you actually go to some of the other farmers or the ranchers along there and just actually build outright hatcheries along the river that would release right to the river? I know that they have a hatchery below Hoover Dam that raises fish and dumps them right into the Colorado River at that point. And it seems to me that would be a workable program, wouldn't it? You'd have to isolate it from the river to make sure that you didn't get the non-natives coming into it. Right, and that's how this system works. It's down there, like I say, it's just at the bottom of Black Canyon, and they have a fish hatchery built right there, and they raise the fish, and their output actually outputs right into the river. So they're pulling river water off, so it wouldn't be that much different than your system. Right. And then they directly release into the river, and then they work their way on down to through the rest of Black Canyon to Lake Mojave.
With your question, would there be other landowners willing to do it? And I have talked to some, and sure, yes, there would, and with the feedback that they've already given me.
Do you think you'd have to do it forever?
The river has a mind of its own. It does what it does. Mm-hmm. I think eventually we might be able to make it to where it would, but you'd still have competition somewhere. It'd take a long time. It would take a long time.
So everybody that I talk to that's kind of environmentally inclined, they blame this problem with the fish on the fact that in the 50s and 60s we put dams in the river system, and that this whole upper Colorado river system got put in with the dams. And they say the dams are what caused this problem with the native species. Do you agree with that assessment?
I think that if you're looking at, did it change the chemistry of the river? I believe it did. But did it cause the problem? I don't believe that.
From what I'm hearing, as far as the program that they have been working on, I think it has more to do with their program than it has to do with the dam.
So do you think we can actually solve the problem if the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will change their thinking, or the Endangered Species Act will be modified to say that you don't have to bring those populations back via a natural method on some of these major rivers where we've taken this commitment to control water? Because the costs seem huge. I mean, everybody wants to take the dams out, but then what happens to the water users, the electricity, all these other things that they built them for?
You mentioned through their natural method. We've moved out of a natural method because of the way that they hold the water back and then flood. So that is not natural, because they've created this through holding back water with the dam. So because of that system alone, I think we can move to this other system because we're not working under a natural system.
It's not going to be natural from this point forward anyway.
Well, and it hasn't been. Right. Because of the dam and the way they've been holding the water back. So because of what we're proposing, I think we can make a difference.
Excellent. I pray that we can find a solution that protects our vital interests of being able to raise food, protect the historic value of the river, and provide electricity and water and all the benefits that come from it. And we thank you for watching. We'll be right back. We're going to take a personal look, take you on the ground, so that you can see exactly what is happening out there on the river firsthand. We'll be back with the County Seat in just a minute.
If you're looking for gold at the end of the rainbow, you'll probably be disappointed, because in Paiute County, the only thing you'll find at the end of a rainy day is the promise of adventure. Highway 89 is your access point through Marysville and the historic trails of Bouillon Canyon. Find yourself in the mountains one minute and the desert the next as you follow in the footsteps of the pioneers. Whitewater raft, fish, hike, all within a few minutes of a comfortable bed and a warm meal. Find out why the world has made Paiute County its off-road destination. Paiute County, the place where the rainbow ends. Look south to adventure. Look south to beauty. Look south to San Juan County. Out here, the road goes on forever, and what you'll find will change how you see the world. Climb on your OHV and discover forgotten landscapes and vistas that challenge the imagination. From Blanding and Monticello to the cliff faces of Monument Valley, we're open and ready for you to explore. San Juan County, Utah's Canyon Country.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Welcome back to the County Seat. What would your reaction be if you watched the federal government come in and randomly shut down your business in its prime money-making season for maybe a month each year, at a different time each year? Or take some 50 acres of your prime farmland, poison another 200 acres by covering it all with salt, and not offer to compensate you. No, it's not a malicious taking, but it is happening, as we find out on the ground.
I'm T. Wright Dickinson. Our family, we've been here in the Browns Park area since 1885.
Yeah, my name's Dave McDonald, and I'm here with T. Wright Dickinson on his farm down in Colorado along the Green River.
Appeared as this bank has disappeared, and you see how the channel is coming.
Starting to fall into this side.
The channel used to be out there. That's the original channel over there against the island.
A lot of this erosion that you see here has been exacerbated by the fact that they put in a dam. Our business is running a bed and breakfast for anglers that work on the river, fly fishing, and I'm a guide for those people. And the runoff from the mountains is what provides us a steady flow of water to keep our fish healthy and our business healthy.
So the pivot, because of the erosion of the banks, we had to build these catwalks, these piers. And the towers of the pivot, the wheels of the pivot actually walk out on those catwalks so that the end tower can finish irrigating the field. And that's a direct result of trying to recover the fish by trying to create a man-made flood down in the Reach 2 in the Uinta Basin down around Vernal, below Jensen. On this particular farm, we've probably lost somewhere around 10 acres of land. While that doesn't seem like a lot, we can't replace that property because most of the land that surrounds us is either federally owned or state owned. There isn't any more private land.
And when you have, as we did last year, 8-week-long full bypass flow, you've trashed our complete season. I mean, it's really, really rough on us. Last year, the estimate is that we, as businesses in this area, year on year lost 20% of our revenue because of that flush. It's just gone crazy what they're getting in the way of damage, and they don't have any reckoning. There's nothing in the legislation that tells them that they must take into account the damage and the impact that they have on the local stakeholders.
Right here, this is the power cable that's coming to the pivot from over here to power pole, and that was set, we were a good 50 feet inside from the bank when that was originally laid in 2006. But you can see there where the pump station is exposed, and we've lost six feet of bank. Right there from the pump to the catwalk, where the handlebars, the catwalk start. In just 2 years' time, we've lost that 6 foot of bank.
And there has to be some sort of way to mitigate this kind of damage to private properties and businesses. It's just not fair, as T says, to allow this to go on without people taking note and trying to make it quit.
We will be back with some final thoughts in just a minute on the county seat.
Let's be honest, you don't know much about Beaver County. Well, let me tell you about it. It's the birthplace of outlaw Butch Cassidy and adventurer Philo T. Farnsworth. Some of the best skiing in Utah is at Eagle Point. You've got camping, Canyon Breeze Golf Course, Crusher and the Tushers, Beaver Territorial Courthouse, snowmobiling, renewable energy, Pioneer Car Show, Squeaky Cheese, Ghost Towns to explore, best water in the country, Paiute ATV trails, Old Frisco Kilns, horse racing, hunting, fishing, and it's a good place to live. Beaver County, mountains of fun. I could tell you more, but why don't you come and see it for yourself?
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
Utah Farm Bureau began as a collection of farmers supporting each other to raise the food we enjoy. Today, Farm Bureau membership encompasses everyone, whether ranchers, growers, or just everyday folks like you and me. Members enjoy discounts on items like vehicles and ATVs, or insurance that's very affordable. You don't have to be a farmer to join, and dues are small, but together we make a big difference in keeping our food supply local and abundant. Join Utah Farm Bureau.
Welcome back to the county seat. Here's my 2 cents worth on our topic today. America used to be a country of problem solvers. We looked for a better, faster, more economical, innovative way to creatively fix things that were wrong. We were incentive-based and forward-thinking. Yet we weren't afraid to use technology to make life better. In my opinion, we no longer are incentive-based. We have become punishment-based. We regulate and fine and restrict to address problems. That is kind of how I see this situation along the river. Wishing that the dams weren't there, wildlife policy tries to force a natural routine on a system that is no longer natural, with huge negative side effects. I believe the fish could easily be restored with on-river hatcheries at a much smaller cost. They would recover by being innovative in breeding them instead of punitive. It seems pretty clear what I have learned preparing for the show is that the issue of the fish has little to do with the dam and much to do with the non-native fish who are more hungry and hardy than the river natives. See, this problem existed before the dams. Targeted breeding is the only way to change the ratios on the river and move them from extinction. But the Endangered Species Act does not allow that logical solution. These massive water releases are taking land, economic opportunity, and most important, water, which by the fake flood program at Flaming Gorge and Glen Canyon is moving water from the upper states along the river to the lower states already thirsty for it. No one is talking about that. Just a thought to consider. Thanks for watching. If you have a different opinion, please share it respectfully on our social media pages. Share this with others, and if you would, take a minute to like or follow our pages to keep abreast of county-relevant news during the week. And we will see you next week on the County Seat.